Hello again, my name is Sandra Sinamakino. I'm back with more business news. Commodities have played a vital role in Ghana's economic history. Over the years, attempts have been made to shift to non-traditional export, but without much progress. Till date, the country still depends heavily on gold, cocoa, and oil. These three have been the backbone of the country, but can we also say they are a curse to the economy? But before we go into the discussion, let's take a look at the country's value of exports between 2016 and 2018. Welcome back, and with Joy Business's researcher and analyst Philip Nanfuri is here for the discussion. You know, I'm always excited to see you on Prime. Now, Philip, before we go into what history tells us about our dependence on these commodities, what do you make of the figures that we showed on the screens?
Okay, so that's data actually from the Bank of Ghana, and it's quite interesting. If you look at the 3-year spread, 2016 to 2018, some will say 2 years, but it's 3 different financial years. You see that in preparation of the data, we disaggregated cocoa beans from cocoa beans and other products, just to show you how much your beans brings you on its own and how much the other products from cocoa bring you. And you realize that the biggest jump in there is from the oil industry. You realize that gold and cocoa itself, the value of the exports has been dipping marginally. We saw that gold went up a bit from 2016 to 2017, but dipped in 2018. So you realize that these 3 make up the bulk of our exports. And if you look at the gold alone, makes up about 44% of total exports in 2016.
Right.
On data. I just ran some quick calculations here, so that it makes about 44% of our exports. That's gold exports alone.
Right.
So that should tell you a lot about where we are.
When it comes to right. It's quite interesting. It means that we heavily depend on these commodities. But now let's go into the history about how we have heavily been dependent on these commodities over the years. What does history actually tell us? Okay,
I'll take us back to 1919 or 1920, during the era of Governor Gaggisberg, and you realize that
that's way back.
Way back, you weren't born. I wasn't born. You realize that about 83% of the nation's exports were from cocoa. 83% in the 1990s. 2016, 44% of your exports are gold. At that time, they were using cocoa a lot. It was bringing us a lot of revenue. Then during the era of the Great Depression, 1929, 1930, the world economy collapsed. So all of a sudden, demand for such commodities also collapsed. Value of exports in Ghana at that time fell from around 11 million pounds to about 4 million pounds. At that time, we were using the pound as our currency. So from 11 to 4 million. There was a hole already in there. Gaggisberg tried to expand into other areas, as we have seen in current or contemporary economic history. And it doesn't work. At that time, it didn't work. 1919, how many years is that? I don't want to even calculate. 2016, we're still talking about gold, cocoa, and oil. Let's even bring it back to 2015, from 2014 to 2015, when these very commodities collapsed, caused a huge hole in our finances, and everything deteriorated, and we were pushed to the IMF.
So it means it's really risky to actually put our all into these 3 commodities.
Right now, it's not like we're putting our all. We don't have a choice.
we don't have
we don't have a choice. This is what we've grown our economy on. We're sort of stuck to it. And if you look at even other exports, the non-traditional ones, the value there has roughly been about 2 billion. And you realize that it's not as much as gold, cocoa, and oil. Gold, cocoa, oil still dominate. If you look at data from Bank of Ghana, other exports is only 2 billion. That is still
so the question I asked in the beginning, these three commodities, they've been a blessing, but will you also say it's a curse?
Yeah, curse in the sense that anytime there's a deterioration of their prices internationally, we suffer.
Right.
And we've been trying to shift away from it. Right now, most of our growth, GDP growth we experience is on the back of the oil sector. If there's all of a sudden a crash in oil prices, what happens to that growth?
Why haven't we been able to succeed in moving to the non-traditional exports that we try to, or we've been trying to?
Okay, I was looking at the colonial masters' reasons for their failure in a book chronicled by Professor Aite. He's a former vice chancellor of the University of Ghana, and there was lack of research and understanding of the Ghanaian economy at that time. So they didn't properly evaluate how other exports could have been used. But over time, we've developed other ones, the non-traditional ones. But it's not high enough to offset the values of gold, cocoa, and oil. So we are still here. There are a lot of policies in place for Ghana to move to industrialization. We've seen this government very heavy on that. But it's going to take a very long time.
And the will.
Yes, I'm not sure it's going to be in our lifetime where we see a substantial shift from commodities or primary commodities to manufacturing industrialization, where we are heavy on that.
I see.
I don't think it will happen in our lifetime, personally.
Okay, moving on, I think Bloomberg is actually reporting that Ghana's biggest cocoa buyer, which is the produce buying company,
PBC.
Yeah, seeks to raise about $100 million from international banks to pay off CD debts that matured since last December. This actually raises concerns or questions about the country's attachment and dependence again on these commodities. Is it right, entirely right?
Fantastic. Look at, if you, not to get into the whole purchasing of cocoa beans industry, but you look at the fact that the price, even as the price drops on the international market, here we refuse to have a corresponding price drop to our farmers. You understand? So you realize that what we pay to farmers, we have maintained it for a very long time, but somebody is always funding that cost. There are a lot of political arguments into that. We'll not get into that. But as the price is moving down in international markets, the rational thing to do is to also go down in terms of what you are giving the farmers. Because you know that Cocoa Board purchases these beans through the produce buying companies or the companies that buy the beans from the farmers.
I see.
So you realize that these same stories will keep on coming over and over.
Quickly,
again.
Before we go, so what's the way forward before we even talk about what's happened tonight on PM Express?
Yeah, determination on government industrialization drive.
Okay.
Active, putting the right things in place to ensure that we make this shift once and for all.
So what's on the menu tonight? PM Express?
Tonight, I think we'll be eating and drinking trade, free trade, finance, and forex, and we're doing that with Nana Osei Bonsu. We all know him. He's the CEO of the Private Enterprise Federation. So I think after this, you should stay tuned.
It's at 9 p.m. on the Joy News channel,
yes,
and also channel 421 on DSTV.
Exactly.
All right, so do make a date with Philip Namfuri for the business edition of PM Express to the international commodity markets now. And crude oil traded at $73.05 a barrel after gaining $1.28. Precious mineral gold went for $1,286.26 an ounce. The commodity update is next.